Welcome to this explainer, focusing on Leadership Academy Module 4. Today is all about emotional control and conflict handling. If you've ever found yourself stuck in the middle of a tense disagreement at work, or maybe feeling the heat rise during a group project, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to take a calm, really practical dive into how you actually master that kind of pressure. Think about this for a second. Leadership is not tested when things are calm. It is revealed when emotions take over the room. Seriously, anyone can steer a ship when the water is perfectly flat, right? But real leadership, the kind that builds deep trust and gets extraordinary things done, that emerges when unmanaged emotions take over and completely challenge a group. That is your true proving ground. We have all seen this play out. Just picture this. You're on a super tight deadline. Suddenly, two team members start arguing loudly over who dropped the ball. Blame is just flying across the table. Other people are getting uncomfortable, or worse, they start taking sides. Momentum completely dies, and the actual work just stops. It could be a workplace conflict, a school project, even tension on a sports team, total chaos. And right at that exact moment, a leader has to step in. But how? Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the emotional anchor, the 3-step framework, common mistakes, real-life scenarios, and finally, wrap up with the response delay challenge.
Section 1. The emotional anchor.
So a foundational truth we have to accept right up front is that conflict is totally normal in any group. Honestly, if there's no conflict, there's probably no innovation. The problem isn't the emotion itself. It's unmanaged emotions spreading faster than logic. You see, a leader becomes the emotional anchor. Research from the Center for Creative Leadership points out that self-awareness is the absolute keystone here. By regulating your own distress first, you provide what the adaptive leadership framework calls a holding environment. Think of it as a safe container where people feel grounded enough to have tough conversations without the whole system falling apart. One calm, self-aware person can literally reset the entire temperature of a room. Harvard's Ronald Heifetz frames this brilliantly as the dance floor versus the balcony. When you're on the dance floor, you're right in the middle of the action, swept up in the noise, bumping shoulders, reacting to immediate emotions. But an emotional anchor, they step up to the balcony. From up there, you can actually observe the patterns. You see the alliances, who is avoiding whom, the real root causes of the distress. You're not just reacting blindly, you're observing strategically. Section 2. The 3-step conflict handling framework. All right, here's your practical toolkit for turning that distress into productive work. Step 1, do not react immediately. Step 2, acknowledge emotions first. Step 3, redirect focus to the problem. It sounds simple, sure, but executing this under pressure requires some intense discipline and emotional intelligence. Let's zoom in and break down exactly how to pull off each move. Step 1 is all about hitting the brakes. As human beings, our very first reaction to conflict is almost always emotional, right? You might feel defensive, anxious, or just annoyed. But a great leader pauses. Silence here is a tool of immense strength, not a sign of weakness. Using simple phrases like, let's slow this down, or give me a moment to understand, creates instant balcony time. It totally interrupts the cycle of escalation. Once you've paused, we hit step 2, acknowledge the emotions in the room. Saying something like, I understand this is frustrating, or I can see why this is upsetting, works absolute wonders. Why? Because people naturally calm down when they feel seen and heard. Leadership research shows us that showing a little respect and compassion instantly lowers defensiveness. But, and this is a really crucial warning, acknowledging is not agreeing. You're not saying they're right to be yelling. You're simply validating that they are upset. Which leads perfectly into step 3. Now that the emotional heat is turned down a notch, you have to redirect focus to the actual problem. Shift the group's energy away from personal blame and toward a real, tangible solution. Asking a targeted question like, what exactly is the issue we need to fix, forces the brain to switch from an emotional state back to an analytical one. You're orchestrating the conflict around the work itself, rather than the personalities. Because ultimately, leaders don't win arguments, they resolve situations. If your goal in a conflict is just to prove that you are right and someone else is wrong, you're stuck on the dance floor. But if your goal is to move the conversation toward clarity, disciplined attention, and shared progress, well, then you are leading from the balcony. Section 3. Common mistakes leaders make. Even well-meaning managers fall into traps that accidentally crank up the heat instead of regulating it. Let's quickly fire off 4 big ones to avoid. First, taking sides too quickly. This completely destroys your holding environment and alienates half your team. Second, reacting emotionally as a leader. If the anchor is thrashing around, the ship is going to sink. Third, trying to prove who is right instead of fixing the issue. Basically, treating a complex human problem like a simple technical one. And finally, ignoring emotions and focusing only on logic. If you just spout facts while people are furious, you're only going to increase their resistance. We can really see this when we compare a traditional leader to a servant leader, based on Quantix research. A traditional leader often operates on ego, trying to prove who's right, using power to force performance, and constantly doing all the talking. But a servant leader, they operate with humility to actually resolve the situation. They share power to drive true engagement, and most importantly, they listen. Servant leadership is fundamentally about serving the situation, not your own ego. And that brings us to this harsh but very necessary truth. When leaders choose ego over clarity, conflict grows instead of shrinking. Every single time you let your desire to win an argument override your duty to solve the problem, you stall progress and you seriously damage the trust within your team.
Section 4. Real-life scenarios.
Let's see how this builds out in the real world. Imagine it's Friday afternoon. Total chaos hits. Two designers are aggressively arguing because a client deadline got moved up, and they're blaming each other for the delay. Now, instead of jumping in and yelling at them to quiet down, the leader creates calm. They take a breath, get on the balcony, and say, "Let's slow down. I can see this new timeline is incredibly stressful for both of you." Boom. Emotions acknowledged. Then the solution phase. The leader asks, what exactly needs to happen in the next 2 hours to get this draft out? Blame is neutralized. Finally, progress. The designers stop arguing about yesterday and start collaborating on the next 2 hours. Work resumes with total clarity. Section 5. The response delay challenge. I want to give you a highly actionable exercise to take away from this explainer today. For the next 24 hours, I'm challenging you to practice response delay. Whenever you face a disagreement, whether it's a major work conflict, a customer complaint, or just a misunderstanding at home, do these 3 things. 1. Pause before replying. Just wait 3 seconds. 2. Listen fully to what they are saying without formulating your counterargument in your head. 3. Repeat the issue back to them in completely neutral words before you react. Practicing this builds incredible cognitive flexibility and self-awareness. It literally turns you into an emotional anchor on demand. As we wrap up our time together today, I want to leave you with this final thought. Leadership is not about controlling people. It is about controlling the situation by controlling yourself first. Mastery over a chaotic room doesn't start with a loud voice or strict rules. It starts entirely with mastery over your own internal responses. And that kind of self-control is the absolute foundation for what comes next. Up next in this explainer series is Module 5, where we're going to dive into building trust and team behavior. We'll explore how true leadership moves beyond merely getting compliance and starts creating deep, lasting loyalty. But until then, I want to ask you a question. The next time emotions take over the room, will you be stuck on the dance floor or will you step up to the balcony? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next module.